And I learned how to take personal accountability for my actions. I knew that I wasn't the victim. I was taught that I had to be the victim, but I resonated with that book so much because I was like, wow, it's definitely in my control, and I'm blaming and shifting the blame onto other people when it's something that I had to do, that I had to put in the work.
Alright guys, y'all looking at the thumbnail, y'all looking at the title of the video, y'all already know what time it is. It is time to get active. Guys, I got a very special video for you here today, alright? Shout out to Rebecca Barrett. She uploaded a video entitled, How I Went From Raging Feminist to Feminine Traditional Wife. Guys, this is a very important conversation, alright? Very important, because I think that many modern women today are hit with so much information from a wide degree and variety of sources that they don't understand how much of that information has crafted the personality that they have today, irrespective of what would actually make them happy. So let's review Rebecca's recount of her life so we can learn. Make sure y'all share this video, because I'm telling you, there's so many out there that would benefit from this content. Without further ado,
today I am going to tell you guys how I transitioned from being a radical, raging feminist to becoming a traditional feminine woman and wife. Growing up, I grew up in a very traditional household. I grew up with a mom and a dad. My mom was a homemaker in the most traditional sense. She made breakfast, lunch, dinner. She cooked, cleaned, took care of the house, took care of the kids. And my dad was the breadwinner. He had his own company. He worked every day to provide and protect for the family. And even growing up, I learned from a very young age how to cook, how to clean, how to take care of my siblings. I was a very responsible child when I was growing up. But also growing up, I learned very young about infidelity, and that's kind of what shaped me and molded me into becoming more of a feminist, and I'll talk about that moving forward. And so when I went to high school and going into college, I wanted to be an independent woman. I didn't want to rely on a man's income. I wanted to make my own income. So I chose to go down an engineering route. I'm a mechanical engineer with a robotics major. I'm very handy and I'm very hands-on. So engineering was a route that I wanted to go down. And that led me to becoming a oil and gas engineer. I was in that field for 3 years before starting my first company and moving to New York. But during that time frame, I was very much in my masculine energy. I was very much in my masculine form.
Okay, just real quick before she gets into her masculine form. So we learned a lot of very interesting things, okay? Traditional upbringing, traditional household. Father was the breadwinner, mother was a stay-at-home, okay? Now within that, she also alluded to some infidelity, which I'm guessing has happened within her parents, which then helped push her towards what she saw as particularly valuable, you know, growing up, when she probably grew up, I'm going to take a guess and say the 90s, right? And which is the surge of feminism from a syndicated on TV, right? Like from a corporate perspective, from a college, a lot of these colleges, and which way more left leaning, right? Like they push all these ideas. So she essentially grew up traditional, which is very important to understand, because I did the video not too long ago, the Jaleesa from 106 & Park video. And from then on, I noticed that she as well grew up very traditionally, but then something pushed them into being independent. Okay. Something pushed them there. So I think that that's very important to take hold of, but let's keep going. See if we can learn some more.
I had to be one of the boys. So that is kind of how I creeped into being a more feminist woman. Now, fast forward, I moved to New York to start my first company.
Isn't that crazy to say? To be more like the boys was how I creeped into being much more of a feminist woman. Pay attention. Pay attention. Let's keep going.
And New York was the place where feminism just took its grips into me and just latched onto me. And I adopted a lot of the ideology from New York and my time in New York. I adopted this hustle culture. I was very much an entrepreneur. I was a female CEO. I had my first company and then a second company, and I was raising money. I was in multiple publications. I had made a name for myself in the entrepreneurial space in New York. The more masculine I became, or the more I was in my masculine frame, the less happy I was, the more resentful I was, and the more combative and competitive that I was.
Which is so incredible, because probably the more successful that she got as well, the more that she exhibited these things within her masculine frame and her presence. But like she just said, the more unhappy, right? Because it's not her natural. It's not her natural. It's not where she wanted to be. Let me touch on something else as well. New York is a hotbed for masculine energy. Why? Because it's the concrete jungle, okay? You have to look out for yourself. Also, being in New York City, it's a liberal city, so you have a lot less conservative or traditional thoughts and or ideologies as it comes to gender roles. And then finally, her running a company, you know, like you have to be a authoritative figure, making clear, direct choices and or decisions in order to have a positive impact on the things that you are building. And you become more successful. You can drown yourself in that success without really taking a break to understand where is your true happiness within life. Anyway, let's keep going.
Being a female entrepreneur, being a female CEO, we had to fight for our seat at the table, right? We were constantly being in competition. We needed to do all of these things to get funding. We needed to sit at the table. We needed to be super competitive. And that is the hustle culture, right? Mm-hmm. That is the dream that so many women seek to lead their lives like, right? And I lived that life. I was that pinnacle woman that people look up to. I had mentees and I had a bunch of women that followed my ways. We were all very successful on paper, but it was very exhausting. It was constantly battling my feminine energy with my masculine energy. And I'm a highly sensitive person. I'm an empath. So meaning I am very emotional, and I also take other people's emotions and absorb it like a sponge. So I'm very in tune with these things. And also I can read a room and pick out bad energy and good energy. I did a whole video on this. I will link that above and below too.
It's very difficult to be an empath and a CEO. It's very difficult because you're making these decisions that are killing you on the inside. Killing you on the inside. You don't want to make those decisions because you're affecting people. You're affecting lives. You're firing people, right? You're hiring people and deciding who to hire versus who not to hire. And it kills you and it eats you up because you feel all of these feelings and you're placing yourself in their shoes, and you just don't want to do that. And there's a lot more women that are natural empaths than guys.
But being an empath, being a female CEO, and living in my masculine frame, I was miserable, okay? I was constantly questioning myself. Why am I so emotional? Why can't I just be one of these other women who understand and get it, who can fight and who can pitch the same way that men do? I was always battling myself, and I was always questioning myself why I couldn't be more aggressive or why I couldn't be more competitive. Being in my masculine frame, being the boss babe, being all of these things was so exhausting. And I was
Pay attention.
I was at my breaking point. Okay. I was at my breaking point where I was like, I feel like I've accomplished so much. And I had lived a lot of this career life very, very single because I resented men. I didn't like being around men. And the only men that I had really were
Coworkers.
my buddies. There was no one that I was essentially attracted to. So I started reading books, right?
There's so many young women that need to hear this message because they might be on some depressants right now, right? They may not have anyone to talk about or turn to because the lifestyle that they've been going down has been force-fed to them as if it's going to make them happy. And they haven't taken a step back to just say, is the information that has been fed to me of who I should be actually who I need to be or want to be or have satisfaction in being? And it really takes a certain type of introspective individual to take a pause and to think and to figure out who they want to be, both men and women. But we're talking about ladies right now, so let's keep going.
I started to work on myself. I discovered that I was a highly sensitive person. I got some therapy around that. I discovered that, I am more sensitive to things and I care about people. And that's just how I am. And I learned to embrace who I was, right? Who I was created to be. And that also meant that I stopped partying and I stopped going to these events and I stopped being that socialite and going to these events and stopped hanging out with certain people that would bring me down because I didn't want myself energetically to be diminished. I wanted to build myself up. And I read Jordan Peterson, 12 Rules for Life, and I learned how to take personal accountability for my actions. I knew that I wasn't the victim. I was taught that I had to be the victim, but I resonated with that book so much because I was like, wow, it's definitely in my control. And I'm blaming and shifting the blame onto other people when it's something that I had to do, that I had to put in the work. And all of that was happening at the same time that I met my now husband. And for those of you who maybe do or don't know, my husband and I met. I was at a work meeting and he happened to be in the same building and we met and it was like a whole thing. I will link that video above and below for you guys to also check out. From there,
the biggest thing that she talked about was the accountability within that. Because she had reached a point where she was unhappy and she didn't know why she was unhappy. But notice what she said. I discovered I'm a sensitive person. What? That's the impact of our media. That's the impact of interest groups, right? That force feed whatever it is that they're trying to do and take a hold of whatever institutions that you become a part of, right? I posted on my community chat not too long ago of like different advertisements for the direct intent of pandering to women. And a lot of people look at stuff like that and they don't even see anything wrong with it. What do you mean? What's wrong with this? How is this pandering? Because they just don't get it. They don't get how subtle things are placed in a way to blind you into becoming a consumer or a producer without understanding the best way to produce and consume for your personality. We're not cookie cutter. We're all different. But she took accountability for herself. She got therapy. She began to read books. She got introspective to say, is what I'm doing aligns to who I am as a woman? Bars.
It was just, we were inseparable. We were inseparable. And the more I started working on myself, the more I realized I was creating a lot of the issues within our relationship. I would get upset with him on things that he didn't even know he was doing and all of this other stuff. And fast forward, we got engaged. And during our engagement process, we were encouraged to pursue premarital counseling. Now, I didn't want to do premarital counseling, okay? Premarital counseling to me was like, why would we do this? We can just get married. Well, let me tell you, premarital counseling was probably the thing that saved our relationship and taught us the roles of a wife and a husband.
Pay attention.
Through that work with our counselor, with doing one-on-ones, I realized that I was still very much in my feminist mindset, right? I had worked on myself. I thought I was doing all this stuff. And I realized that I needed to take on the role. If I wanted to be a wife, I needed to take on the role of a wife. And what does that mean, right? A wife is submissive to her husband. My husband leads in my relationship. Does that mean that I am a doormat? Does that mean that I'm a slave to him? Does that mean that I do everything that he says? Absolutely not. And that is what is probably the biggest detriment to women, because that is what they believe. They think that being submissive means that a man can just walk all over you. And if that's the case, no, I'm sorry. I'm here to tell you guys that being submissive, all that means is having trust in your husband's decision-making skills, having that ability to lean on your husband and letting him take the lead in the household. I'm his co-pilot, right? But we both have to share our opinions. We both have to share in the conversation. And then at the end of the day, he makes the final decision.
Everything that she's saying is so anti to what they push in the feminist movement. Guys, this is the number one thing that I see that's wrong with asking for marriage in 2021. It's the number one thing. Women that want to get married are asking for men to sacrifice in order to provide them this traditional contract that we know at the end of the day, whether they get into the contract and the guy's the breadwinner, or they choose to exit the contract, that the woman comes up. The woman comes up, but you want said contract under your modern goals and values, or the modern way that you conduct and handle yourself. The feminist ideologies that you push with in this relationship, you still want all of that. It just can't work. It does not compute. It makes no sense to me, because under these modern times, men have no benefit at all in getting married. So the more that we see you walking around with these feminist ideologies, the more dudes will choose not to participate in the bullshit. All right? Questions, comments, concerns? God already know what to do. Mediocre tutorials and reviews at gmail.com. Shout out again to Rebecca Barrett. Guys, I didn't go over the entire video on purpose, so you guys can go down there, click the link down in the description box down below, go check out her channel and see all of the lovely gems that she drops. As I've said previously, we got to find much more of these young ladies that have these phenomenal stories, right? That talk about one ideology, switching to another ideology, and then the benefit within that. And then the more that we let this information be known, the more that can have an effect on the modern woman today. Until next time, YouTube.